When I say golden, you say eagles. Golden, golden. Good morning, all my favorite students. I'm sorry I can't be there today. I'm traveling a little bit with my family this week, and but I told Mr. Clayton that I would do chapel this week, and so I'm trying to do it from near my hotel room in Atlanta. So I just had a little bit to share with you this morning, and I miss you guys so much, and I'll be back on Monday. I'm looking forward to seeing you all again. Before I jump into the chapel message, I wanted to cover something. If you were in first grade, could you please raise your hand? All right, well, with Outdoor Ed, with them this week and last week, I've been working on a new project about vermicomposting. And so I love how much you guys are using the garden outside and enjoying it, and we're just going to make it better and better. And one of the ways we're going to do that is by starting to compost our own food. So first graders have been learning all about worms and the process of composting, so that when I return next week, we can actually build our own composter in the garden with thousands of worms taking food and turning it into black gold, which is soil that really helps grow plants really well. So we're going to begin that process of actually building the composter when I come back. Now, part of the job that the first graders have been given about composting is that they're in charge of teaching others and showing others how to compost in the cafeteria. So I told them, well, the next time I was doing chapel, that I'd tell everyone else what that means. And so what we're going to do is excess food of certain types in the cafeteria, we're going to actually save it and throw it in to the composter outside in the garden that'll be built, and let them turn it into soil. So not all foods can go into it, but there's quite a number that can, mainly fruits and vegetables. And so we're going to just have you guys, we'll teach you how to do it, but we're going to have you take any excess food that you just don't eat that day, maybe don't like, maybe some peaches or an apple core, a banana peel, those kind of things. Then we'll have you put them in the composter so that it can go right back out into the garden. So we'll learn more about that, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's a new thing that we're going to be doing here at school when I come back. All right, now on to the message about chapel today. Sometimes I know exactly what I'm going to do 1-2 months ahead, maybe a couple weeks ahead, but this time I wasn't so sure. Thankfully, I had an 8-hour drive to really think about it, and my dad, it was actually the one that gave me the idea. So I have to thank my dad for giving me this topic today to connect to school. I usually like to talk about something that connects to real life, something that's going on, a current event. And there's a big current event right now which affected me a little bit, and that is Hurricane Dorian. So in case you aren't aware, hurricanes, they come across the Atlantic Ocean towards Florida and Georgia and the East Coast, and as they approach, or as they cross the ocean, they get much, much stronger. So their winds swirl to the point that they could get 150 miles per hour. So Dorian, each one is given a name. All the hurricanes, and so the first hurricane of the season starts with A, and then down B, all the way through the alphabet, and then they'll start again. So Dorian being letter D, it's the fourth hurricane of the season. Now some of them, they're just tropical storms, and they don't get to be that big, but Dorian did get to be very big, and it devastated the islands in the Bahamas, and it approached Florida. Well, I had this trip that I was trying to do down towards Georgia, which is right next to Florida, and I had to wait to find out when to be able to go, because the hurricane causes quite a bit of damage, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to get here. So, but thankfully, Dorian kind of turned off, and it didn't hit a lot of land here in the United States. It just hit the islands in the Caribbean, and then we get a lot of wind and rain close to the shore. Well, now for the adults here, I wanted to provide one additional little piece that maybe kids can't, they haven't had enough life experience to know yet, but I was interested to see how, when I was on my way down here, the main highway between Macon, Georgia and Savannah, Georgia, which is my final destination, the highway had turned from being a north highway on one side and a south highway on the other side to being totally northbound. So the easiest way to get from Macon or Atlanta to Savannah on this highway was closed. I couldn't do it. So we would have had to go around the long way. And I feel like that was kind of a metaphor for Christianity, in that oftentimes or in life, that we think we know the easy way, we can see it, but then we have to take the really long way to do it. So kids, you haven't had enough life experience to know that yet, but I certainly have had quite a number of times where I thought there was something that was pretty easy, and then I had a direct route to do something, and I had to take the long way around. But whenever you have to take the long way around, there's a lot of satisfaction in the end, and usually some pretty good stories as a part of it too. But anyway, so I was thinking about the hurricane, and the hurricane is a big storm. And I thought, my dad said, well, why don't you connect it to the Bible and the story of Jesus in the storm? And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. So he was talking about the book of Mark, and Jesus and his disciples go out to fish on a boat, and a storm pops up. It's called a squall in the Bible, which means it's got high winds. The waves are crashing. If you've ever been on a boat or something, you can imagine that, where it's just, the weather is brutal. And his disciples are getting scared, and they're wondering what to do. Like, we're stuck out in the middle of this body of water in this lake. What are we going to do? And Jesus is on the boat too. Well, he's not worried. In fact, he's asleep. That's right, he's asleep. Jesus is asleep during thunder and lightning and this terrible storm. Now, he's asleep not because he doesn't care. He is asleep because he is not worried. He knows. So the disciples come to him, and they wake him up, and Jesus, wake up. And he does. They ask, what are we going to do? How are we going to get out of here? And Jesus says, why are you so afraid? And he stands up and calms the storm with one word. That's the power of God, right? It's just to be able to, one word, to tell a storm, a squall, calm down. And immediately it happens. Now, Hurricane Dorian is a physical storm, and God could do that too. But there's many storms referenced in the Bible, the books of Isaiah and Luke and Psalms, Ecclesiastes. They all mention storms of some kind. Now, these are physical storms, like storms you see outside, like thunderstorms, but they're a reference and a metaphor to challenges and storms, in quotation marks, storms in our own life. So a storm to you and to me doesn't have to be a thunderstorm. It could be, I have a math test coming up, and I'm so worried about it. I'm moving to a new house and I'm scared. I am, my family is having trouble at home, and it's giving me a lot of anxiety. It's making me frustrated. My friends are not being the nicest to me this week, or it could be anything. Any challenge of life is a storm. The Bible tells us, no matter whether it's a thunderstorm outside or a thunderstorm in your heart or in your personal life, to not be afraid, to do not fear, that God has not abandoned us, that Jesus is here for us. And I don't know about you, but that's sometimes hard to remember, is that when you're in the middle of it, and especially as this hurricane came to the United States, there was a lot of people that were very afraid and scared, and they ran, and they should. I mean, and when there's something that dangerous, you do have to evacuate. But don't be afraid about losing your home, because God is here. Jesus it remains in our lives, and we don't have to fear those big things. And I thought it was interesting that in the Bible, it's mentioned so many times, not just the one in Mark, but like I mentioned, in Isaiah and Luke and Psalms. So it's something that when something's mentioned a lot in the Bible, it's important. If it's mentioned a lot in the Bible, it's important because clearly God knows there's going to be challenges and storms in our life if he talks about it all the time. Okay? So we need to know the right response for that. And the right response, which is backwards. I know this is crazy. But instead of being afraid of those storms and afraid of those challenges, God actually calls us to embrace them. He calls us to be thankful for them. And that's pretty cool, but a little weird. Normally you wouldn't hear that. But God wants us to be thankful for them. And here's why. Because when a challenge comes, we can rely on God to get us through it. And then we grow as a person. And here's the big part. Once we grow as a person and have been through a challenge, we can help someone else who has gone through a similar challenge, something else. So at school, let's take the math test example. Maybe you're really good at math, but your friend isn't. And you learned how to do math. It was hard at first, but you figured it out, how to do multiplication, and somebody in your class doesn't know. And they're finding it really hard and they're getting really frustrated. And that's their storm. You can help them do it because I had a really hard time doing this, but once I figured it out, once I did this and this and this, I figured it out, and now I can help you. That is the Christian way of life. We are to look different, to act different, to stand out. We do things differently because God calls us to be different. When we go through these storms, when we go through these challenges, we do so to become a better person so that we can help other people and glorify God. So I hope that whatever challenges, whatever storm you're facing, Hurricane Dorian took a detour out in the ocean. It's only going to be a little windy down here today and maybe some rain, but nothing too bad. I hope that the storms in your life are doing that too, where they're veering away, and if you're right in the middle of it, that you can find hope in God and Jesus. You can speak to them and allow them to work through you, and then once you go through it, you can help somebody else find their way through their storm. I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Clayton. I will see you guys on Monday. I miss you so much. Have a great day.